Good morning, Mary, and welcome to the Public Service Leadership Academy's Leadership Insight Series. The Leadership Insight Series is really intended to share the experiences and the expertise of senior executives with the rising leaders in the public sector about topics such as presidential transition, leading in times of crisis, and advice to leaders in government on the qualities and capabilities important when they're making hiring and promotion decisions. So today we have Mary Davie, currently at NASA, who was previously at the U.S. General Services Administration for many, many years. So welcome, Mary.
Thank you, Martha. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Mary and I actually worked together at GSA. And of course, we've been in the same community and, around each other for many, many years. But I wanted to take just a second because Mary's got a pretty impressive genealogy here and background of her accomplishments in the government. So right now you're the Deputy Associate Administrator in the Mission Support Directorate.
Right.
And then before that, in the Mission Support Transformation Office at NASA.
Yep.
And before that, she spent all of her federal career at GSA. So tell me anything I have misunderstood, but I think I know your history. She was headed up the HR Shared Services area at GSA. And before that, she was the Deputy Commissioner at the Federal Acquisition Service, where she supported $50 billion worth of products and services. So we weren't talking about a small, insignificant amount of money that you were kind of overseeing the contracting and the acquisition pieces of. Mary started her career at GSA as a college intern, which I think is always impressive when you start there and you end up as a senior executive, both at GSA and at NASA. She's a NAPA fellow. She's a 4-time federal Fed 100 award winner, a 2016 Eagle Award winner. And she's actually, maybe her proudest accomplishment is she's a Hokie.
That's it. I knew you were going to go there. If you didn't, I was.
There you go. And she's a mother, and she has several grandchildren.
My son has several children.
Yep. Her son, I wasn't sure how to exactly say it in the proper way, but I didn't use the word.
Exactly.
And Mary has lots of hobbies. She's an avid bike rider and hiker and just an all-around balanced person. So it's always been my privilege to know you and work with you. And I know, with all the years of service that you have and all of the accomplishments that you have, it wasn't always easy either. So I think learning from the good parts and the bad parts is always a good thing for all of us to take into account. So what got you to starting at the beginning? Like what had you join why did you join the government, I guess?
So the summer job part when I was in college was from a family friend who worked at GSA, and she knew that I was looking for a summer job. And so it was in the Assisted Acquisition Services group, what's now, DEDSIM. And so they, like from the day I walked in as somebody who had no idea who they were, what they did, what I was supposed to do, they treated me like I was a member of the team. And that really struck me and stuck with me throughout my career about how you help people learn and grow and what that means for somebody to believe in you and to bring you on as a member of the team and help you develop. And so when it came time after school, and I graduated and was looking for a job, and I did a whole bunch of different kind of short-term jobs, and I really didn't find what I was looking for. And I called them back, and they took me back. And then that's what kind of launched me. But again, it really was because of the people and how they treated me. And then, we had a lot of fun and we had a lot of really interesting work. And, because you're at GSA, whose mission it is to serve the rest of the government, I got to work immediately with, Department of the Air Force, Commerce, EPA, Army. I was all over the place learning and meeting, different people across government as well as in industry, because GSA again plays sort of that middleman role between industry and other agencies. And so just, the opportunities were endless, and, you get really close to different missions, which is always really attractive. And so that's why I stayed. It's just a lot of fun, a lot of good work, and you got to feel like you were really contributing to something.
Yeah, it's amazing too. I came in from somebody we went to church with actually got me into GSA when I was like 18, so I was in college as well. So it's interesting the comparison. And I was actually in FedSim before it was FedSim, so we'll have to figure out those dates and see how far apart that was. But it is true, like just feeling like you belong somewhere. And what struck me about what you said is what you get to do at such a young age in the government sometimes is people don't understand. So when you talk to college graduates or people who are at that stage in their life and they're looking for their first job, how do you explain that to, of course you're sitting here with the moon behind you.
That's
um
right. The earth.
so
It's the earth.
oh, is it the earth? I was like, I'm gonna say the wrong thing, I know.
That's a lit up moon back there.
So what do you say to them?
So it's interesting. I've just recently joined what's called Hokie Mentoring Connect, and it's a platform that Virginia Tech put in place in the business school. And I'm so honored to be part of the management department's board. And so I'm the only Fed on there. And so I really wanted to be able to do that, right, to draw and attract people into government, the students, and have opportunities to talk to them. So I've been talking to folks that are either in their junior or senior year through this platform. And it's exactly the same question, why federal service, versus industry or nonprofit or something else. And what I always say is, again, you want to be in a place where you're surrounded by good people, where you feel like you're supported and they are interested in you, but then also make that connection to what you have interest and passion in. So, and you may not find that right off the bat, right? You may,
Right.
the first, and that's what I'll also tell them is don't just struggle so much about whether or not you should take that first job unless you really feel in like your gut it's a bad fit. It's going to be a learning opportunity and a growing opportunity regardless, and it'll be a stepping stone to something else because you're going to end up meeting different people, you're going to end up working on different things that maybe you would never have thought of. And so then that'll help you, with maybe what the next thing that comes along. So I just tell them, look for things that really interest you. And of course, the government is so two things to it, right? It's big, and it's like, what does that mean to go work for the government? How do you even find a job in the government? And then how do you connect yourself with what you're interested in? But at the same time, because it is so broad, you can do anything, right? We're doing IT, we're doing really interesting contracting. We're working on environment, the climate, the parks and recreation. So there's really nothing that you couldn't find in terms of an interest area. And then you get to, again, make that difference, and help improve how that experience is for the citizens of this country, or you get to help, maybe influence policy or legislation that, again, is going to help improve things in that area that you're interested in. So that's what I tell folks, is to keep an open mind, look for things that you might have an interest in, but be open to trying something. And then if it, for whatever reason, it doesn't work out, try the next thing.
Right. I think the good thing too I think being able to make a difference and have a real purpose is the most important thing. But even when you're younger and you can move around in the government and you don't lose your vacation or so
Yeah.
it's a good. I know people in industry see that when they're looking at the government and they've gone from one job to another and they have to start all over again. So at
Hmm.
least seniority, that's the word I was trying to think of. So you kind of keep that seniority building up over time.
You do. And it's what I explained to this guy this past week was it's kind of like slow and steady, but
Right.
it's solid, right? And if you
Right.
put your all into it, you're gonna be given opportunities and you're just gonna grow.
Yep.
And I told him 32 years in, I wouldn't have made a different decision now, knowing what I know and how it's worked out. Um, and it is phenomenal. And I feel really lucky to have had the career that I've had, to have the opportunities, the people that I've worked with. It's just been awesome, and I wouldn't have changed a thing.
Yeah. When you think back on those 32 years, it's hard to, I mean, even the list of, I hit the high points, but all of the programs that you were involved in and the ability, that you had to make a difference in the way agencies were able to buy the products and services that they needed to accomplish their mission, and of course then connected to the citizens or other businesses or whatever. I mean, it's pretty remarkable when you sit back and think about it.
Yeah,
um, and as a career public servant, sometimes it's not always easy, because you've got every 4 years, every 8 years, you have new people coming in, other people leaving. Sometimes they don't really think they should be leaving. Sometimes they think that they've done such a great job. They even if there's a new president, they think they should stay. And it's
yes.
always fun when you have to explain that that's not the way it works. But how do you recommend, or what do you recommend to people, the career public servants, as new people come in, for really building trust with those new political appointees? I know we've both had many, many, many people coming and going over the years.
I think there's a couple things. So the first is be really aware of what the current administration's priorities are. There's probably the top 4 or 5 things that you should be able to list because they make it pretty clear. And then you have to understand with the political appointees, they each, bring a different kind of interest or focus. They've been hired to do something specific for the administration. And so get to know them, learn about their backgrounds. They're probably easily, you can Google them,
Right,
right?
right,
Find out
right.
kind of where they came from, what they're doing, and then just find opportunities to interact with them. And they'll immediately tell you, what they're focused on, and then you have to start to kind of draw connections to the work that you're doing and put it in the language, right, of those administration's priorities. So, now with climate and science and building back better and infrastructure, for instance, those things align perfectly to what NASA does, as an example. And so you can take the work that you've been doing and just, kind of reshape it, if you will, in words, right, to those administration priorities, because that's going to help you with O&B. It's going to help you with the hillside and getting, funding for
Right.
those initiatives and things like that. So just really be aware, do your homework, and I think also just be a really good listener so that they can develop a trust in you and get to know you as well.
Yeah, I think, at least for me, I found you really, we're pretty resilient. Federal employees are pretty resilient. I mean, they can pretty much, weave back and forth and shape what they're doing to meet those priorities of that new administration. Have you had any leadership challenges, that you would share? I mean, not, it's, I mean, I know we all have, right? Like,
Yeah,
it's not, I always tell people it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when and how you handle it.
right.
So what do you recommend if a political appointee comes in and it's just not going to work?
That has happened. And it's definitely, it's nothing partisan related. Sometimes it's just personality,
Right, right.
for whatever reason. And so you have to also really decide, is this right for me? And am I going to be able to do what I think I should do and need to do, right, for the organization, in that situation? You certainly want to try to make the best of it. And you want to continue to, do the best that you can and show that you are absolutely committed to the organization and supporting what needs to happen. And then, sometimes you need to figure out how to keep the distance,
Right.
and really do kind of a delicate dance, and sometimes find, allies that can align with you, that are going to help support you. Because again, it's sometimes, just personally, you have to make some decisions for yourself about whether or not you are going to be able to continue to thrive and sometimes survive, right, in that
Right.
environment, or not. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, you kind of find ways to manage that
Yeah.
situation.
One thing you said about find your network of allies or whatever, that really spoke to me, because that's something that people should be doing every day, right?
Yeah,
Creating that network and working across their agency as a leader to create those people in your, in your camp and you in their camp, so that they know you got their back and they got your back too.
right.
So it's a great point that you made. When you're shifting over to like the rising stars or leaders or just leadership qualities, when you look at people in your organization or you're hiring a new leader in your organization, let's say it's a 14 or a 15 kind of manager leadership kind of level, what qualities do you look for in the people that you're hiring?
Again, I think first of all, it's what's the awareness with what's going on big picture wise. Are they aware, and are they, what are they doing, right, to support whatever sort of the leadership wants, career or otherwise, in the organization? Could they name the priorities for the agency, for example, and maybe be aware of what, the things that are going on, to move those forward. Also, how they treat people, and that's at all levels. If the people in the organization, there's obviously nothing more important than that. So what kind of interactive style do they have with leadership above them and their peers, and people that would be their employees? That's a huge one. Also, how they collaborate and communicate, because you've got to be able to deal in really tough situations, and you also have to be able to convey things, to either defend something or to try to do almost a sales pitch, right, to get something up and running or off the ground, or get funding for it if there's competing priorities. So communication is a big one. Being, just transparent and open and honest. When you talked about, building the alliances and the network, people, that's all built on trust, right?
Hmm.
And relationships. And they know that you're going to be an honest broker, you're going to be open, you're going to be you, and you're going to have, you're going to want to work with them because it's what's best for the organization or for the people, and not necessarily for, you personally. So, those are probably some of the things that we really look for. Obviously, you're going to want somebody that has a basic understanding or
Right.
more of the
Right.
job, right, and what it's going to take. But what I also look for is somebody who has the ability to ask really good questions to determine if it's a good fit for them. Is
Uh-huh.
this the right job for me? And I had this the other day. I was talking to someone, and she wanted to know about the position that we were hiring for, but more importantly, she really had questions so that she could assess whether or not this was going to be a good fit for her. Because if you're not happy or able to
Right.
do the job, that's going to be a mess for everybody.
Right.
And so I really appreciate that when people are really thoughtful about asking good questions.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a bad fit, it's a no win for anybody at that
Right.
point. So that is a great point as well. And as you're as you're going through basically your whole career, or I mean, and GSA and NASA, but GSA, since you spent so much time there, there were always things happening in the country, right, that we had to respond to, and GSA was in the middle of every
Yeah.
emergency across the country. What about when there's, and sometimes it's just things like when we had the Las Vegas conference issues, that kind of crisis. But how do you manage or lead your team in a time? I mean, and that's probably a pretty good one. I mean, you have things like weather crises and things like that where GSA is supporting different
Mhm.
state and local governments through their procurements, but when you have an administrator who leaves and a new one coming in, how do you handle that in terms of leading an organization?
I think people need to feel like and see that there's light at the end of the tunnel, and that there's a bigger picture vision of what we're trying to accomplish and their role in that. So I've been through several crises, both right at the agency level and then organizationally as well, where down to the individual employee, people weren't sure what that was going to mean to them, their job,
Right.
their career, things like that. And so you have to address obviously what's happened, and then you have to show them that we are going to persevere and that there is a bright future, and it might be hard, right, to get there, but show them that there's a clear path of getting there and what we expect from them to help us either rebuild or, rebuild trust and confidence with the agencies that we support, ensure that they're going to have a place in the organization, but that might mean change. And you might not have the same job that you had. And you might have to go do something different for a while. And, that may or may not be permanent, because obviously that's up to the individual, right? If they want to stay and try something different or be something, be in a new role. So I think through that, really, it was, also being calm and steady. And as a leader, you want to panic and say, oh my
You
God,
set the example for them.
right?
Yeah.
You can panic at home and say, oh my God, the sky is falling.
Yeah.
Right? And then regroup and say, okay, so what do we do about it and what can we control? And, how do we react to that, and kind of, help position things and present a united front at the leadership level, and really help the employees feel like things are going to be okay.
Yeah, that's keeping calm and, steady, to steer that ship is definitely, they all look up to the leader of the organization. Of course, we've had interesting times over the last year, right, with COVID and presidential transitions and
Yeah.
all of the racial, injustices. And so it's been a 2020 was a tough year. And it seems like at first I thought 2021 was just an extended 2020, but it seems like, as the weather gets warmer and the vaccines keep rolling out, it seems like there are some bright spots coming. So how have you managed your teams at NASA in order to, and thinking even back at GSA, because, we had a pretty flexible remote working and teleworking policies. So how do you keep teams connected and feeling like they're part of a bigger thing when everybody's remote?
Yeah, so you're right. At GSA, I just, from almost the day I walked in, I remembered, that we were fairly remote and distributed, because at GSA you're serving other agencies, which oftentimes means you're with them, right? And so you may not have a day-to-day connection with your actual team back at the agency. I think part of it is the infrastructure and the culture, right, that is set up to support that. And so especially with COVID last year, NASA didn't miss a beat. We had the technology and the tools, and in some cases, people were working remotely, but not a lot. We were either all in the building or we were all on center. And obviously, in some cases, the people that are still doing launches, right, they are on site and on location. I think we were still at about a 95% telework when we were sent home, like literally today, a year ago. And I'd only been there 6 weeks and I wasn't quite sure, what to expect. But what I found was, the agency, which most federal agencies of, all of them have talked about the safety and health and well-being of the employees.
Right.
And NASA took that very seriously. So we recognized that when that was happening, people had a lot of things in their personal lives to deal with. Oh, now maybe I have young kids at home and they can't go to school. Now I've got to deal with that, or parents, or illness, or whatever it was. It changed everybody's life. And so you had to recognize that and give them the flexibility that was needed. And I think because we came at it that way, and honestly, people would just write you a chat and say, I'm going to be out for the next 2 hours or something. And nobody batted an eye.
Right.
And yet I also feel like we got more work done in the past year than maybe we would have. I was joking with someone the other day. I don't leave this chair for about 10 hours. And sometimes I'm still late to meetings. Like, how does that happen? Because it's just, one after another. And I don't know if I would have been in as many meetings, right, in the office like this. But because we have the technology now, you have the opportunity to have individual one-on-ones, through video, which I make a point to do with everybody on my team. And then to connect them in ways, beyond just like a typical weekly staff meeting. And so a couple of weeks, everybody logged on and I said, you know what, today we're not talking about work. They all just kind of looked, and I said, so Aaron, you broke your foot. How's that going? Or, Justin, you were supposed to get married, last weekend, a year ago. So what's that like, that kind of thing. And so we just laughed and we had a good time, and it helps people get to know each other also on a personal level. And, many of them have worked together for a number of years, but I think it just allows people to see that everybody's human.
Right.
And, it's not always just about the work, but, we have gotten so much done this year, both at the agency level, but even in the individual work groups. And I think that's because people feel like they have the flexibility to take care of things they need to take care of, and they're working harder than ever as well. And it's almost like a camaraderie of, we're in this shared weird place, and it's affected everybody differently, and we can talk about it. And like with the unity campaign things, we were spending a lot of time talking about what that means to individuals, on the diverse teams, and how that's impacted people personally. So we spent a lot of time talking over the last year, and I think that's actually been really helpful, and will help us be stronger together as a work unit as well.
How do you think this will, the big question is what's going to happen as they start to roll people back in the offices? And I know there's been some surveys done about, people being more flexible, and agencies have definitely learned, the agencies that were not open to that. I know USDA is redoing their telework policy right now for, when people come back in. So what do you think it's going to look like? Or what would you recommend it look like for agencies?
So a lot of conversation around that. And NASA has been, rethinking that. And part of it is, how can we build resiliency into our work? So, we have a good infrastructure in place. We were able to respond and then adjust as needed. But, the word that's been coming up is being resilient and being able to not only be responsive when different things happen, but be in a place where you're able to support it almost again without kind of missing a beat. A little bit more than proactive, but build it in a way that is really reflective of not only, situations, but also, again, what's best for your employees, and how can you take advantage of people kind of wherever they are now. And so we have a lot of our vacancy announcements now are not location specific. Right. And we're doing that on purpose because we understand that, the work can get done, and in not all cases, but in many cases from anywhere. We're relooking our physical footprint, not just about space, but about how, again, that infrastructure supports a blended workforce of people that may be in the building full-time, maybe in the building part-time, other people that are always going to be remote as just part of your work team. Like I've got somebody, people on my team right now, I've got somebody from, Johnson and Houston. I've got somebody in Marshall at Alabama. A couple of people are here. Somebody's in California. And so, again, it almost doesn't matter for my unit where people are, because now we're able to connect and get the work done with all the kinds of cool collaboration tools that we have. So we're definitely thinking about that a lot, and then building in this blended idea for the future is what the IT folks and the facilities people are thinking through right now.
So in terms of the collaboration tools, I mean, there's the video, meetings, and then there's also platforms where you can share documents and work on things. Is there any other technology that you guys are using that you've really found to be useful?
Those are probably the big ones. We were like a Microsoft platform, so we use the 365 suite and extensively. So that's things like Teams, where you can do the collaboration, right, and the video and the chat. Sometimes it's almost too much, right? So you're sitting in a video meeting, people are sharing links, and then they're also chatting, and it's like, how do I pay attention to all of this? Yeah, it is. So, that's another thing that, you really have to be aware of is, when is it too much? Yeah. And so if we're requiring people to be on video, like I am totally Zoom fatigued. And right, so there are times where I do want the camera off because I want to sit back and be engaged, but I'm going to put my feet on the desk and I'm going to listen. Yeah. And so, this other idea of getting people together informally, we did that a lot at first. Everybody's like, oh, a Zoom happy hour. And now it's like, oh my God, if I have to look at that camera
Right.
one more hour at 6
Right.
o'clock tonight, I'm going to just lose it.
Yeah.
So you have to find that balance as well. But, you have to make sure that the things are working, and, what's going to happen with the VPN connection, or what if my internet service here is out for a part of it? Then what do I do? How do I get to, connect, and how can I work? So we've had to think through a lot of those things as well.
Yeah, it's the coop stuff on steroids, right? Like
Yeah.
you've got to, I mean, there with all of the weather issues that we've had across the country, I've known companies that had contact centers that every contact center they had got knocked out by ice storms and
Oh,
internet connections, and people usually if there's an ice storm, they send people home, and then people were already at home and their internet was out. So
right.
it was difficult, but I think those are all really good. I mean, some of the more common things that we always did at GSA even was, now all meetings I'm sure have like a connection for how
Yeah.
you get into it. So those things need to be carried forward. So no matter where people are, I had a baby shower, a Zoom baby shower.
Oh yeah.
And the crazy thing was people were like, oh, it's too bad you can't, we can't do it in person. But we had people from Colombia and London and
Wow.
all these places that they would have never been able to come if
Right.
we had it just in person. So there's definitely a lot of advantages, and all of us really learning how to use those advantages as we go forward, but then,
Yeah.
go back into a kind of a new normal.
Well, the other thing that we kind of joke about is, well, what if we all go back to the office like even a couple of days a week, but because our team is so dispersed, we just sit at our desk on the video all day. It's like, well, why did I bother making the trip to?
Yeah, I had a few of those days when
I do miss seeing people in person and just having that interaction. I was only at NASA 6 weeks, and then so poof, we disappear. So I've gotten to know people obviously this way, but I was actually getting around and meeting people in their space. And we had taken a trip to Kennedy my second week there, which was great. I'd taken a trip out to Goddard, and we had more trips planned around to the centers, which hopefully I'll get to do that again. But you make the best of it. And I tell people I feel really lucky to have been able to continue to work, and especially work for an agency like NASA, and do the cool stuff and sit in staff meetings where somebody's talking about what we did on Mars this week. And just, it's really neat.
Well, NASA always comes up as one of the maybe the top best place to work all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have any advice for other agencies based on being at two different agencies, but what makes it? Is it the mission, or is
Well,
it?
that's definitely part of it. I mean, the cool factor you cannot beat, right? We're launched people to the space station.
Right.
We're bringing back samples from meteor that we, got a sample return there. We just went to Mars again. You can't beat the cool factor.
Right.
And NASA does an amazing job communications wise with the public, right? On
Right.
winning the kind of the hearts and minds of the public, and how good it is for the country and really for
Right.
the world, and the benefit in science and climate and everything else for us. But they, again, and GSA was the same way. They care about people, right? They put the people first. It's, let's make this a good place for people, not just to attract a great workforce, but we recognize how important people's, health and well-being are. And so I felt that deeply at both organizations.
And keeping that, just making people feel proud to be a public servant, to me is always, and even when you're gone, like after you leave and you look back. I was talking to somebody the other day, and it was a previous OMBer, and I said, you look at those things and sometimes you're like, where am I going to put all this stuff, and you think, I'm just going to throw it all away. And then, but when you look back on it and you can look at everything and you're like, I did a lot of good stuff when I was there. So
Yeah.
you should be proud of all the time. I just wanted to, a couple other questions I wanted to ask. One around, as people are in the government, we've talked about people coming into the government, but what about as they're progressing in their career throughout the government? What advice do you give them on how to get ahead, because it's not just about getting a promotion, which
Right.
it's about how to, but that's what people want to know, right? Like,
Yeah.
how do you move up in the chain?
Yeah. I think it's, to me, it's almost the same advice all along. It's, don't be afraid to step out and step into something and raise your hand for something, right? Because that's going to give you exposure to different people, different parts of the organization, different, kinds of work. One early on, fairly early on in my career, when I was working in a part of what was FTS, right before FAS, and the organization was working on standing up a whole new capability, and they needed just a few people to kind of develop it, test it out, see if it was going to be something that they were going to keep around. And I was volunteered for that, and it was very different than what I had been doing. It wasn't acquisition related at all, and so I was a little bit hesitant, but at the same time I thought, well, why not? It's going to be working with people that I like. It could be temporary, or it could maybe turn into something else, and why not just go try it? And it was successful, and I had a blast. And so that kind of set me on this path of, why not, try it again, unless it's something that is not a good fit for you, or that you might not enjoy doing. Just do it, but at the same time, do it with the right intention. Like, what value can you provide? How can I contribute to that? What am I going to get out of it? And what would the organization get out of it? And then things just kind of naturally happen. And that's at least the way they did for me. Is the next thing would kind of come along, and usually I just say, sure, why not, without asking too many questions. Now sometimes I regret not asking too many questions, and actually joke with like Jim Williams and some of the things that he said that I should do, and he's like, it was a great thing, wasn't it? I'm like, no, but it was a good learning experience, and that's
Yeah.
okay too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are great. I had a lot of those opportunities too at GSA, where you work on a agency wide kind of committee or something, or solve a problem. You meet so many people from across
Right.
the agency that you would have never met, that invariably you're going to have to reach back out to at some point in your life to, you know,
Yeah,
get
you're
some
gonna need them. Right.
get some information, or and then just learning new things is always valuable when you're working at an agency. So
It is. Well, and leadership wants to see that you've worked on different things. And also when you're maybe coming up for promotions, or more, I guess I should say, more senior level positions, you don't want the leaders of the agency to say, Mary, who? Like, who is this person? Because
yeah,
you're not going to get the job.
right.
Just.
What about networking with, between government and industry, as
Huge.
you're moving up?
Yeah, the partners program, like with Act IAC, for me, I was a 2003, so that would have been like, I don't know, 10 years into my career, maybe a little bit more. But that networking piece, because it was networking with other federal agencies, which is really important, right, for the GSA
Right.
role,
Right.
but also with industry, and again, important because of the GSA role. But that to me was a game changer, because now all of a sudden, again, it's all about the relationships, the trust. Who can you call on, whether you need something, or want to offer something? That piece is huge. And I'd say to people, as young as you can get involved in those kinds of
Right.
things, do it. And then don't be passive. Like, you can be, volunteering on committees, or putting, panel discussions together, or being part of, an event, and helping, because then you're going to, meet more people, and they're going to get to know you and get to know what you're capable of. And so that's a good career builder for you.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So, is there anything we haven't talked about today that you think is important for people in government, or even the industry, really, to, as they're thinking about whether they should go into the government? Anything that you would want to cover that we haven't, or?
I don't know if I would say anything we haven't covered, but I would just say, again, always be open-minded. And, somebody who spent 32 years at GSA, I don't know that I look back and say, gosh, I wish I had gone to other agencies earlier, or, built more, and a lot of people do, right? A lot of people are in different
Right.
agencies and they get a whole bunch of different experiences. You get different exposure to different culture, different ways of doing things, different, language, which is important. And so you should be open to moving around and doing different things. GSA, you got to move around and do different things. And because we were in the middle of everything, it always felt like something new and different. And oftentimes it really was. You can do everything from real estate to IT, or, run the fleet. So just, I would say, be open-minded and don't be afraid to kind of move around and try new things, and just sort of, build those stepping stones, because people are going to look at that and say, wow, they really have seen and done a lot of different things.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I spent all my federal career at GSA, and I do the same thing. I look back, but when you do work with other agencies, you feel like you at least get to a little taste of it.
Yeah.
So in kind of closing up, if you were to look back 5 years from now, or in 5 years, if you were to look back, what do you think the government's going to be, like in 5 years?
Well, that's an interesting question. I would hope that we have learned, um, from, not only the last year, but just the last several years, that we can and should do things a little bit differently, try to be more agile, try to do things more quickly.
Mhm.
The great bureaucracy of government, sometimes things take a really long time, and with each administration, priorities change. The way you do things sometimes, changes, and you have to be adaptable to that. But I'm hoping that, the government might see itself as the ability to be more agile and adaptable, and pivot faster, when we need to. I think, back to some of the GSA stuff, when you have a wildland fire, right? Everybody comes together, FEMA, USDA, GSA, everybody really quickly, and solves for that problem immediately, gets the supplies that we need, gets people on site. So we can do it. Sometimes, unfortunately, it takes a burning platform
Right.
to do it and to recognize it. But I think we have to build on that, because it's going to be better for everybody.
I think that's perfect closing. And it's thank you for your service,
Oh,
32
thank you.
years.
I'm, again, very lucky to have been able to do it and to work with people like you. I mean, we had a blast.
Yeah.
Sometimes we were crying, but we had a blast.
It is. It's the great memories for sure. So thank you for doing this. I know that there will be lots of people who learn a lot from what you've shared with everybody today, but thank you.
Well, thanks for including me. I feel honored to be part of it.